Habe ich noch nie gesehen so, aber das ist kreativ. Ja?
final competition of 2023 in the Bobsleigh and Skeleton World Cup. We're in Innsbruck in Austria, and the last race of the weekend is the Königsklasse of the blue ribbon, the four-man bobsleigh. Hello everybody, welcome back to round out our coverage here from the double Olympic city at Innsbruck. On the track at Eagles, 21 sleds from 11 nations racing for the European Championships as well. I'm Martin Haven, delighted to be joined by Nick Gleeson, former British brakeman turned driver. And Nick, I'm sure like everybody else, this is a track that has got some good and some bad memories.
Absolutely, Martin. Everyone knows this track's probably one of the easier tracks in the world, but it's also renowned for being one of the hardest to start because of how short and flat it is. It's also one of the shorter tracks in the world, and as you'll see, that the time the four-mans go down in, it's not a lot of time, so the start deficit is really going to be beneficial to your downtime. So here you're going down through corners 4, 5 and 6, the middle labyrinth of the track, as you head on your way down into the big Chrysler 270-degree left-handed turn, which then spits you out down into 8, into 9, which is normally one of the pinch points that will catch people out. It's a 1.5 pressure corner, and there's a big long straight all the way down into 10, another massive sweeping left-hander down into the labyrinth, the fastest bit of the track, a right, a left and a right, down into 14, the massive finish corner, up into arguably the hardest braking straight for any braking, is where they earn their money basically. Up, big braking corner, slamming back on the brakes, making sure you get that sled stopped, especially in the first hit. You don't want to be ruining those runners up on the rubber.
Absolutely right. We saw a lot of the women's sleds heading up there into the unknown on the rubber, and hopefully they'll be through those in the four-man. Hansi Lochner leads the World Cup standings from the world and Olympic champion in four-man Francesco Friedrich and Emil Tsoupulis lying in third place. It's been an interesting season of variety so far, racing in the Olympic track in Beijing, last weekend in the 92 Olympic track at La Plagne, this weekend the 76 Winter Olympic track here in Eagles. There is Johannes Lochner with the track announcer from Winterberg. Francesco Friedrich up in the changing rooms over the start line. And there, making his return this weekend, is Brad Hall of Great Britain, where Brad's been away with injuries. In fact, almost everybody in the team has been away with injuries over the winter and coming back here for the first time. So raced in the two-man without injury, and they will go off last in the four-man. Of course, Brad Hall with the four-man bronze medal from Samaritz in February under his belt. Well, our start draw, we get underway with Mati Bienek from the Czech Republic, one of 3 Czech Republic sleds. Dominik Dvorak from Czech Republic is away twice, at 2 rather. And then a couple of Italian sleds. We get into the meat of our potential medalists with the likes of Mickey Vogue, Francesco Friedrich and Johannes Lochner, who were all on the podium in what was a double four-man race weekend here in February. And there might be some outsiders as well. Brad Hall took 2 silvers here in February. We'll wait and see what happens in our first heat. Race 2 of the BMW IBSF, race 3 of the BMW IBSF four-man bobsleigh World Cup, the European Championships here in Innsbruck in Austria. Martin Haven watching the action with Nick Gleeson as Mati Bienek starts us for the Czech Republic.
Absolutely lovely load there by the guys, just struggling to get those handles in. Obviously, when you've got 4 guys loading to a sled like that, the space is very small, there's limbs flying everywhere, ice spikes, the lot. So get in, get down, and then hold on pretty much.
Start record is quite ancient here. It's a decade old, 493. Not sure we're going to get down to that today, but the ice is hard and fast. And for the four-man, that's particularly important because there's a lot of weight on a very small, narrow runner at each of those corners. And they tend to carve up the track. Little rattle out of 9. And again, this lower labyrinth, this just comes at you thick and fast. Across the line, 51.54 now, with 21 sleds in the field, only 20 go through. So the very first thing that the newer drivers will want to do is make sure they are in the top 20, and that will be part of the target for Mate. And Nick, as we talked As we talked about with Mika earlier, when you're learning how to drive sleds, it's every time you're in the sled, you're trying to look for those big improvements.
Yeah, absolutely. When you've got about 1,200 meters worth of ice in front of you, you'll have a coach. If you're only with one coach, he'll be stood in one corner. You get one chance to go past him, get it right. So this is why the driving takes so long to learn.
And so few trips down the track every season as well. So that's why the best drivers are in their 30s and some of them knocking onto their 40s. Next up for the Czech Republic, Dominik Dvořák. Didn't race here in February. He's had a few knee injuries, and that was part of the reason why he didn't. He's got Michal Dobeš on the back of his sled, David Buress, and Dominik Zaleski at the back. Well, they had a pretty decent day yesterday in the two-man. They'll be looking for more at the start. 11th in the last European Championships. They were in Altenburg. Top 10 finish in the Europeans would certainly go a long way to helping Dvořák. Well, Nick, you've been in a four-banger many times. Getting four big 100-kilo guys squeezed into these tiny sleds is no easy job.
Absolutely not. As our old friend John Morgan says, it's choreography on ice. We do so many loading drills at the garage before we get to the track, just to make sure that hands, feet, all the places that we need to stick limbs and stuff like that going exactly where we need to go, so we get in, get down, and the aerodynamic service going all the way down the track. Otherwise you get at the bottom with an angry pilot.
Whoa, a little late in 11, he's gone. Ooh. And that is the first crash in the labyrinth we have seen this weekend. Comes across the line, so 51.13. And again, when you crash there, yeah, that's the drama, is there's no brakes and the sled ends up going all the way up the mat. We talked about this in the women's race. One year, a Russian four-man went right up into where it really narrows, couldn't get the guys out of the sled, couldn't move the sled. I mean, it took forever. There's Dominik Zaleski. He kicked out as early as he could, but the other guys are all trapped in the sled. Their teammates, well, here he's late in 11, gets very high, and there's 400 kilos just toppling that sled over. There's no chance that's coming back.
Absolutely not. Once these big four-mans want to start to roll over and put you into a crash, it's really, really hard to get them back. It's quite an event when it happens. Obviously, it's not ideal, but this just goes to show that even though this is the easiest track in the world, it can still throw some mistakes out there, catch people out, and then things like this do happen.
Well, it's racing. You know, that's why the greatest Formula One drivers in the world crash cars, because they're always right on the ragged edge, and that's exactly the same here. You don't win things, you're not quick by being careful and conservative. You win, or you go quickly by hanging it out for way above where your brain's going, okay, that's fast enough, all right? I mean, you can relate to this as a driver now, is that you're going, okay, that's quick enough, I've got to go quicker, I've actually got to trust it.
Yeah, absolutely. The old saying is that, you know, the fastest sled is the sled that's closest to crashing, because you're just letting the sled run, you're letting it free, you're not steering too much, creating the friction on the runners. But ultimately, you let it run too far sometimes, and something like that does happen. Yeah. And there's nothing you can do to stop it, unfortunately.
It is all judgment, and here they're desperately looking for every whisker. You know, we'll see places changed by just 100th of a second. We'll see dead heats in the race. So every single fraction you can find makes a big difference. Giovanni Molisano up there at the top with the Italian crew of Mattia Variola. They're waiting to go. There's Dominik Dvořák on the right-hand side, Zaleski on the left. They were together yesterday in the two-man. Well, he is quicker than teammate Mate Buhenek. And so if the boys are okay, he will go again in the second heat. They cross the line, all in the sled. It's a legal run, not comfortable, but legal. And he was quicker than Buhenek. So At the very least, Dom will be in the second heat. And again, you've been in that position. I mean, we all know the ugly ice burns that you've got, but you know, the very last thing you want to do is walk away having crashed. You want to get back in and prove that it's not going to happen again. And that's the confidence you have to have in your driver, that it's not going to happen again.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, the guys compete at this level. The pilots from every single nation are super experienced. Literally get the sled out, get it back up the top, get back in it and go down again, because you'll be able to go down, correct the mistake immediately, and then you'll be kicking yourself at the bottom thinking, I don't even know why I made that mistake.
Exactly. And sometimes you look at the video and still go, how did that happen though? Okay, so track hold as the workers check that there are no untoward gouges in the ice. What you don't want is the ice starting to drive the sled, particularly there where you're knocking on over 120 kilometres an hour. There you want the driver to have full control. So Mattia Variola, Jose Abu, who was in the two-man sled yesterday, Fabio Batti, who was in the two-man last weekend, and Mauro Colantoni are the three brakemen behind another brakeman. Mattia Variola started on the back handles of a sled and has moved forward to the driving seat, and that is very much the way a lot of these guys and girls are becoming drivers. Get brought in as a quick athlete, a quick set of legs to help motivate the sled. And some athletes take to driving and some don't and go, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm really scaring myself. I'd rather just be, part of the motive force of the sled. And it's the same for some. They take to driving, and some, no, I'm quite happy not to bother with that. So here we go then, ready to get the race back underway. 2 of our 21 sleds down in the first heat, and we already have a degree of drama. So it's trying to focus again for Mattia Variola. Mattia finished in 15th place in both of the 4-man races here in February. He was 14th in the European Championships in Altenburg in the 22-23 season. So if he can improve on 15th place some 9 months after his last race on this track, that's exactly the sort of metrics that he'll be looking for to be better than Mattia Variola 22-23 version. And that comes, as we talked about, Nick, with experience, with kilometres on the ice. There's no other way of getting better. There are no simulators, there are no techniques for learning how to drive. You've got to actually drive.
Absolutely.
So here we go. Again, you'll have been in this position with Brad and the boys and on your own after a track hold. You know why it's a hold. So you just got to go, okay, big boy pants on. Here we go. .520 getaway. That's not a bad start.
Absolutely not. I think the work that Giovanni, their push coach, has been doing with them over the last 2 years is really starting to pay off. Each year the athletes seem to be getting quicker and quicker, and the results are starting to come to them with their push times on the ice. Giovanni
started as a skeleton athlete and then transferred to Italy's bobsleigh team with Simone Bertazzo, and is now their conditioning and speed coach. 92.6, second quickest to Dominik Dvorak. Mattia's not as experienced a driver as Dvorak, and he will be trying to get cleanly down out of 10 here into the lower labyrinth. Right, he's passing the gouges so that that little monkey off his back, I didn't wreck it out of 11, 51.05, and that's the difference between coming down on your runners on a more conservative line. He was definitely not hanging it out there. He was being careful to get it down and done. And that's 500s quicker than Mattia Variola's crew did on their side.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you have to go down with your team after another sled in front of you just had a crash, there's always going to be that sort of uncertainty, like, is there maybe something wrong with the track? Or there is going to be that doubt in the pilot's mind of suddenly their ability, but lo and behold, the professionalism comes through, and he got it down lovely.
Hauled it off corner 9. You can really see the late steers there. There's Simone Bertazzo helping the crew with the sled. Lots of hurry-ups for the Italians, because now we've got Patrick Baumgartner and his guys, Eric Fantazzini, Robert Mazzea, who was on the 2-man sled yesterday, and Lorenzo Pilotti. This time, or this track in February, was a very good one for Patrick Baumgartner. Not as good as Beijing was a month ago, but he had 2 sixth-place finishes here, some of his best ever World Cup races at the end of last season. And a 5:18 start, so a couple of hundreds quicker than their teammates.
Lovely load there as well. Nice and slick. Get in, get down, nice and fast.
Youth Olympic champion in 2012 in boys bobsleigh, Patrick Baumgartner, when he was still a callow youth. Now a decade later, finally starting to really put the pieces together at the top level. 3rd best speed, but he has a 1/10 of a second in hand over Mattia Variola.
Yeah, as Greg mentioned the other day, I think that this has always been Patrick's weak point, and they're slowly starting to gain their momentum with that.
Yeah, the more horses you can put behind a driver, the better, whether they're strong or not as strong. Across the line, how far in front? Oh, a head popped up at the back there, 51 dead, so they're 800s in front of their teammates. And that's all part of the battle again, isn't it? You know, whether you're a new driver trying to earn your position, or whether you're effectively, you know, the #1 star trying to maintain your position, you're always battling a teammate if there's one to battle.
Always, always, always. And it's, when you go out and race, obviously you want to compete. You're competing against the best in the world, other nations. But if you've got another teammate there who's also trying to beat you, there's that in-house rivalry, which is really, really good to get people to the next level.
Well, if you can't beat your teammate, you're never going to win anything. Next up, Mickey Vogt of Switzerland. Again, we're looking at a multi-sled team here and a battle for supremacy. Mickey Vogt is effectively Swiss 1. Bronze in the European Championships in Altenburg last season. Only an 8th and a 6th place tie here. Second race, he was tied with Patrick Baumgartner. The first race here in February, Baumgartner was tied with one of the Chinese sleds, Sung Kai Chi. So there's a lot of ties going on this track. 5:24 the getaway.
Again, these Swiss boys, when it comes to pushing, have made some massive grounds. Their push coach, Chris Woolley, you know, former push coach and S&C coach for the GB team, has been working absolute wonders with them. Really annoying that we don't have any more, but I am jealous.
Well, for Mickey Vogt, this will be his penultimate trip in a bobsled until St. in the middle of January. He's not going to training camp in Winterberg next week, which most sleds are going to, getting ready for the Worlds, and he's not doing the Swiss Champs either. He's got a disc issue in his back, and they desperately want to rest him. They want him fit for the rest of the season and for the World Championships. And across the line, 400s behind Baumgartner. That's a really good indication of what a good run it was from Patrick Baumgartner and his crew. They outstarted the #1 Swiss crew, and they outdrove them as well.
Yeah,
So
I think Baumgartner and the team are going to have a really good breakthrough season this year. Obviously, starting off with the confidence from the World Cup in Beijing, and I'm hoping for them it just starts to get better from now on.
Absolutely right. I mean, everybody, when they start to gain that traction, that's where careers really can turn around. We've seen that so many times, and hopefully that will be the case. It certainly was for Mickey Vogt. Once he started winning medals, you get into the fact that that's a bit of a habit, and you are comfortable with it rather than surprised by it. Oh, is that the horn for the goat? I think it is. Francesco Friedrich, European silver medalist, but a 2-time winner here in four-man in February. Candy Bauer, Alex Schuller and Felix Straub, he won his first race last weekend, 5:02.
They don't disappoint. They're pushing monstrous as always. Obviously, Friedrich's back and healthy from the injury that he had last season, so it's good to see him back on top form.
No Torsten Margus in the sled this weekend. He was in the four-man last week in La Plagne. 93.2 best speed from Francesco Friedrich. He has had a host of wins on this track, Friedrich. Particularly in the COVID years when we did, what was it, a dozen four-man, two-man races in a row. He pretty much was unbeatable. 128.4, good speed at the bottom. Very good run from Francesco Friedrich, 50.43. The all-time record is a 50.07. Guess who owns that? But we're not going to get that. That was set in February. In fact, that was set in the first of the 2 races in February. And the boys are always looking for a cold, crisp day to try and challenge the start record, but that remains intact. Not the tidiest in the labyrinth, Nick.
Yeah, very loose with the labyrinth, but, you know, if the time's in the green, you're quick. That's all that matters.
Do you know what? His driving style develops. Like all great drivers, you develop to suit the equipment. He is getting looser. He is less controlled with his lines. He's more about let it fly. Next up, Cedric Follador for Switzerland. 7th of 21 sleds, the 1/3 distance in this first heat. Omar Fergala making a rare appearance in a 4-man with Dominic Hufschmidt and Gregory Jones. So Fergala made his World Cup debut last season. And the battle here now with Cedric Follador and Simon Friedli is that Mickey Vogt is saying to them, come on, give me one of your guys. I need more at the start. But they're trying to hold their World Cup places against Timo Rona, who's racing in Europe Cup. So they don't want to be dropping down the order and losing points either. 5:15 getaway.
Again, a very good start time for the Swiss boys. You can tell that all his work's paying off. The load was lovely, in, down, and good to go.
And it's hard to come into a team, isn't it? You know, when you've got 3 other guys that are well rehearsed. If you're the new guy, you really feel the pressure to be as perfect, more perfect than them even.
Oh, absolutely. Team cohesion is a massive part of it, and you'll get 4 guys and not necessarily the fast guys, but you put them together and it just works.
Yeah. Big skid, 9 to 10. He was 3rd fastest, now 4th best speed at the line. And again, Brakeman pops up very, very early. There will be a little bit of a look at the video there. I'm not saying that he definitely was hauling on the brakes as they came across the line, but he was definitely sitting up. So Cedric Follador comes across the line, 2nd quickest, and he is 47, 57, 61, 1400s ahead of Mickey Vogt. Exeter 9 here. And again, classic driver's error, just carries a fraction too much steering off 9. Okay, I think that was probably just at the line as they come across. If you put the brakes on in the track, you are immediately disqualified because it ruins the ice for everybody else. So Cedric Follador, 2nd at the moment, behind Francesco Friedrich. 3rd Swiss sled is Simon Friedli, another former brakeman turned driver. Pascal Moser, Luca Rolli, who was on the 2-man sled yesterday, and Andreas Haas, who was on the 2-man sled in La Plagne. Well, Nick Gleeson, they've started 400s quicker. That should be 1200s quicker than their teammates at the bottom. Let's see how that transpires.
Yeah, the old rule of 3. 10th of the top is worth 3/10 of the bottom, providing drive it nice and straight and don't hit any walls. So we've just got to hope that he hangs on to it, doesn't lose too much time.
2nd best speed behind Francesco Friedrich, who is our runaway leader at the moment. But this is all about sort of setting themselves up for the Swiss Championships that are in a couple of weeks' time in the Christmas New Year break in St. Moritz. Track has been completed, track building has. The finishing touches will happen this week in St. Moritz. At the line, he is in front by 1/100th of a second. So ahead of Cedric Follador by 100th, 2nd place behind Francesco Friedrich, but Simon Friedli is the top Swiss. Nice height in 10, in the Chrysler rather, brings it out nicely. And again, the Exeter 9, he's done steering, but that late runner pressure just drives him a fraction into the wall. We're talking about just 100ths of a second difference where you steer and how much you steer, making a big difference, particularly in that all-exposing slow motion. For Latvia, Emil Sipolis, David Springs, Mats Miknes and Chris Lindenblatz. Lindenblatz, the relative newcomer here. David Springs, Mats Miknes, both have tried driving, I believe, in the past. Tsoupulis at the front of the sled. 2 fourth-place finishes here in February. He then went on to be in the medals at the World Championships. I'm sure he would love to do the same again. 5:02 getaway. That's equal fastest with Francesco Friedrich. And there's the ambition for Emil Tsoupulis, our World Championship 4-man silver medalist. Gap's growing a fraction. Third best speed. Here we go. He's not going to lose too much more to Francesco Friedrich. 2/10 back at the line, 1700s. It wasn't a bad run down through the lower labyrinth. Maybe you see in the replay that he was a little bit cleaner down there at the bottom than Friedrich. If you wang the sled off all the walls in the labyrinth, you are going to crucify your speed. Look at that. Look at the pressure on the sled from the handles. It all starts rocking and rolling.
The Latvia programme have a history of just somehow just getting these mutants of men into bobsleigh, putting them in a 4-man, and it's just unbelievable to watch.
Well, their only track, or their only current track, is beside their biggest city. So although it's a nation of only 2 million population, they are close to the population centre. There's a chance to drag them in. Now for Markus Treichel of Austria, 2 fifth-place finishes here in February. Some of his best World Cup results as well. He's got Sascha Stepan at 2, Markus Sammer at 3, Christian Huber at 4. Sascha was on the 2-man sled yesterday. And Markus Treichel was 5th in the European Championships in Altenburg in January this year as well. Oh, long skied. Did he avoid the wall? Maybe. Now, we talk, Nick, about getting 4 big beasts into a sled, but you've got to get them in gently as well after the violence of the start.
Absolutely. As soon as it comes to race day, everyone wants to run it as far as they can, but obviously the grooves that the sled sits in at the start are set to a certain distance, and if you run it past that, and you're getting in and you're pushing the sled all over the place, it will just create a massive skid going corner 1.
Yeah, the ideal is that you drop in perfectly, still going forward, but vertically in line. Of course, that's almost physically impossible when you're coming in from either side. Third best speed at the bottom and third at the line. 4500s back. He's 100 in front of Simon Friedli, 200s in front of Cedric Follador. So 3 sleds covered by 200s. Again, the nature of this track is that we will have a lot of snakes and ladders in the second heat. Sliders will gain a few or lose a few. Oh, let's have a look, let's have a look. Great work by the camera, and to follow the nose of the sled there, he just got eased around the corner by the little fillet where we go from wall to floor. That was close. Francesco Friedrich leads by 1700s from Emil Tsoupulis, and Markus Treichel at the head of the squabbling pack behind. Now then, Johannes Lochner of Germany, bronze medalist in both races here in February, 4th in the Europeans in Altenburg, missed out on the medals. He's got Eric Bruckert, Joshua Tascher, and the beast Georg Fleischhauer behind him. They were victorious again yesterday in the 2-man competition. Been having a very successful season so far in 2 and 4, Lochner.
Brilliant push from there.
5:04, just 200s behind leader Friedrich at the start.
Yeah, Hansi's having an absolutely incredible season this season and last season. I think coming away from the Olympics, he's had a sniff of Olympic medals, and now he's really on the hunt for the golden one.
And adding Georg Fleischhauer into the mix has just doubled the fun quotient in the team and really helped that little bit at the start as well. Best speed of all, gaps coming down from 1200s to 900s, still quicker than Friedrich, within 100th or two of the line. 900s back, 50.52. Now, 900ths of a second, 700ths of a second is the blink of a human eye, so 900ths of a second. If it was a 1200 meter running race, 900ths of a second would be a photo finish, but we're going to talk about that as if it's quite a big margin to be behind, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. And for a sport that's going so fast over such a long track, and the variables there aren't really too many of them. It's ridiculous that people can come down at that speed over that distance, even in ties.
Yeah. Well, 900's back, Hansi Lochner, little mistake from 9 down to 10. There'll be a couple of other things that he'll be thinking of that they'll try and change up a little. Lee Chun-jan, well, not in the hunting for European medals, but in February here, 13th in race 1, tied with Jekabs Kellender of Latvia for 11th in race 2. Wei Peng behind him at 2, then Xu Shilong and Wu Qingxi, his two-man brakeman. There he is in the centre on the back handles. Wu with this odd kind of cantering horse-like running style on the back, very evident in the 2 and the 4-man, 5:19 the getaway.
Again, for a nation that hasn't really been around for that long in the sport, the pushing and the loading is definitely making its progress. I'll be really interested to see where these guys are in about 4 to 6 years.
Yeah, they started up their programme really quite close to the home games, just about 6 years out, which isn't a massive amount for generations of development. But Yannis Millins is bringing their drivers on, and this is the first of 2 Chinese sleds that go back-to-back. So near identical conditions, identical sleds. It is a mano a mano, or whatever the Chinese version of that is, for being top Chinese driver. Second best speed at the bottom. Absolutely flying through the speed traps. 50.986. Is that right? 50.98. He comes down in 7th place, not 6th place. 5500s off the lead, 200s ahead of Patrick Baumgartner, and in front of a tough tussle. Again, look at Wu in the back there. Real kind of lopsided running effort. You want to get the energy all going as straightforward as humanly possible. Sun Kai-chi of China. Ding Song, Yi Jae-long, his 2-man brakeman this weekend, and Cheng Heng, who was on the back of the 2-man sled last week. Again, they're bringing in new blood into the team. This is all part of the development process. Newer, younger athletes coming in and battling for their positions in the team, trying to find the perfect balance. 5:13, so he outstarts his teammate by 600ths of a second.
A very strong start from the Chinese boys here, considering they haven't been doing the sport for a very long time, to be within just over a 10th of Friedrich. It's really, really good work.
6th fastest start so far for Sun Kai-chi. Like his teammate Lee made his debut in December 2019 when we were in North America. That's where they all learned to drive, in Calgary and Whistler, Lake Placid, Park City. 2 gliders tracks, 2 real drivers tracks. Across the line, 4th place, 50.88. That is a very good run from Sun Kai-chi. Now, he didn't race here in February, so it's been 18 months nearly since he was on the track here, December 21. Sixth fastest start, 4th at the bottom. That tells you a lot about how good the drive was. And the fact that we go straight to corner 9 for the error rather than Exeter Kreisel kind of adds to that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Like I said before, everyone class is a really easy track, but the smallest mistake and it will just take time away from you.
Absolutely. The devil is in the detail. Next up, second of our Latvian sleds, Jēkabs Kalenda, 10th and 11th place in the races here in February, 12th in the European Championships last season. Egerzungas, Davs Kaufmans and Maris Klaver behind him. Klaver, the newest member of the crew. And again, these guys will look to start in the top half dozen to give Kalenda as much of a chance as possible of reeling in teammate Tsipolis. Tsipolis lying in third place, just 17 hundredths off the lead. Then we've got a tie for fourth, Marcus Treichel and Sun Kai Chi, 45 hundredths back. So there's a yawning chasm between third and fourth. And a sixth fastest start is going to get them with a chance of getting into that group.
There was a little bit of struggle I saw there on the load. I don't know whether someone got their spikes caught on a race suit or they managed to get in and get down.
Yeah, spiking your teammates is a hazard of the job if you're starting at 3 or 4.
Absolutely.
Your legs have to go around the body of the man in front, and all those little needle spikes are quite frequently caught up in race suits. We see a lot of training tracksuits have got lots of holes in them. And of course, those holes go through into the body as well. Down at the bottom, how far back? Not the greatest run, 51.09. Sixth best, so this is the opposite of what we just saw from the Chinese guys. You can see watching there, Sun Kai Chi and his crew started sixth best, ended up 12th at the bottom. Sun Kai Chi started sixth best, ended up 4th at the bottom. So Kalenda, not quite with the experience of his Chinese rival, but a couple of errors. Let's take a look down here in the labyrinth. Yeah, bodies coming up out of the sled as they bounce from wall to wall. It's all very comfy in these sleds, isn't it, Nick?
I wouldn't call it comfy. I think you grow to get used to it.
Yeah, the bruises help. Yeah, the callousing on the hips and the shoulders help with that. No, there's no seating, there's no padding. It is bare carbon and steel, and all at sub-zero temperatures. Next up, Jakob Mandelbauer made his debut in the two-man yesterday. He's got Adam Wiener, Dominik Hanschitz, and the man who was with him in the two-man sled on the back handles, Diane Nicholas-Bardi. So again, great to see Austria bringing another sled into the World Cup campaign. 5:27 their getaway.
Yeah, it's good to see Austria bringing through another development team, obviously with Benny Meyer now gone. Marcus Treichel has taken over the #1 spot, and hopefully Mandelbauer in a few years may even overstep Treichel.
Now, on his debut, he is on home ice, but a couple of very late exits there. Out of 5 and out of 6 coming down to the Kreisel. Oh, and he comes down too early and out of the Kreisel right into the short wall. He is battling with the Czech Republic's Matej Buenek, and that is the end of the battle. It's not going to come back up, so this is a very uncomfortable ride. At more than 75 miles an hour, heads and shoulders bouncing around in the sled, on the ice. We talked about this yesterday in the two-man race, about why Burns vests are so important for athletes, because this is almost as bad for the skin as running along a tarmac road. Sled's coming back, track workers, look out, boys.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, it's going back down the exit into the finish dock. And that is a lot of weight. It's not going fast, but it is a lot of weight. In fact, it wasn't just the track workers, that is the other Austrian crew. See, that's Treichel's boys there helping out. They saw the drama, and it happened a long way out.
Yeah, it all kind of started from the exit corner 4, really late, slid off of it. Exit 5, again, wasn't the best. Tried to get an Austrian shortcut out of 7. Unfortunately, there's a wall there. And then it just kind of... Any mistake you make up top, it normally takes a few corners to regain the control back, but sometimes the sled's just too far ahead of you, and by that point, it's just out of control.
training conditions were quite different. It was quite cloudy, very humid, and very slow. And I think just today's super fast race conditions have really caught him out. There's a lot of weight control to control in a four-man, and here again brings it down too early. G-forces push him right back up. I mean, the sled is beyond the horizontal there, beyond the vertical. It's wiped out our mini cam on the wall. So it looks like the steering, maybe one of his steering cables had snapped at that stage, and then it's just, you're all passengers tucked in. He's trying to hunker down there. Right, so what happened there? Well, he's gouged his finger, and if that's the only injury they've got, then that's very good news indeed. They're down. They did come across the line, but they will not get a final run, and that saves Matti Boenek, because Boenek was at the tail of the field up until then. High drama for Jakob Mandelbauer and his crew. It did look as though either the steering had seized straight for some reason, or he was not able to steer, or felt that he didn't need to steer. But normally, the human instinct for survival cuts in and you just haul the sled off, don't you? That's where panic comes in and sort of overrides the brain.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Mandelbauer could have been down this track hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times and not had a problem like that. So as soon as you experience a problem that you're not used to, you suddenly don't know how to deal with it. And when you're in these massive four-mans, well over 600 kilos, any sort of steering takes 4 meters for it to take effect. So you've then got to think 4 meters before anything, and if something's going wrong, it's just you're in an absolute like a daze from it, because you don't understand what's going on.
And really unusual to see somebody, even a new driver, having a big mistake in corner 4. I mean, it's not a fast corner, it's not a big corner, and yet he was all over it like a rash. Yes, there is broken steering, and you steer with 2 D-rings. Basically, it's like an old soapbox cart. You pull the right-hand handle, it goes right. You pull the left-hand handle, it goes left. They're suspended from the top and tensioned from the bottom by bungee straps. But you can see one D-ring hanging, the other one on the bottom. So something definitely went wrong there with the cables. The other cables, you can see, that's for adjusting how much feel, how much turn you've got to free the steering up a little bit or to quieten it down, depending on the nature of the track. So there's all sorts of adjustments you can make, but basically the axle is driven by the 2 sled handles, the 2 D-rings, and we're gathering from down at the finish that as he jumped in, that actually damaged the steering mechanism in some way. So right from the first corner, it seems as though he might have been able to turn in one direction, but not the other, which is less than ideal. And again, we've talked about this 2 or 3 times this weekend with start load mishaps. Andrea Greco of Romania getting in and having to grab both D-rings with one hand. You can do that with a steering wheel. We've all done it when we're changing gear in a manual car. You're still steering. Here, if you take your hands off the steering, there is no steering. The sled goes where it wants. So you can't have one handle. That doesn't help, because then you can only steer in one direction. So not having a steering cable, a major drama. Well, very glad to see the boys are out of the sled okay. And as we get ready to continue, after the first 15 sleds, it's Francesco Friedrich from Johannes Lochner and Emil Supoulis in 3rd. A little bit in no man's land, but a long way from the tie for 4th. After our second crash of the run, boy, they're saving the drama for the end of this weekend, aren't they? We are back into action in the 4-man. Martin Haven, Nick Gleeson watching as Mihai Tentea gets ready to get us underway again. Constantin Dinescu, Mihai Pakianu at 3, a former skeleton slider who's become a bobsledder. That's his dad, Julian, who's the team coach there. And Georg Yodash, who was on the back of the 2-man sled last week in La Plagne. It was Mihai Pakianu who was on the back of the sled in the 2-man yesterday, behind Mihai Tentea. So again, for the second crew in a row, that 2-minute hold, and you've now got to go down aware that the guy in front of you had a nasty, well, not nasty injury, but a nasty crash. So it's that's all part of the mentality, not just of the athletes, but of the drivers as well, Nick, that you've got to put it out of your mind, just focus on your job.
Absolutely, like we just seen with Mandelbauer's sled, it wasn't a driver error, it was a equipment malfunction.
Okay, let's see what we've got. Mihan Tentea, 5:18, 10th best start. That's the kind of start that needs to get him into the equation. 8th in Europeans in Altenburg, but here he finished 16th and 18th in February's races.
5:18 is a brilliant getaway for those guys. They're one of the lighter teams out on the circuit at the moment. That sled's going to probably be fairly heavy. And the fact they pushed the heavier sled back quick is fairly impressive.
And their stalwart, the linchpin of the braking team, Cyprian Dorocci, retired at the end of last season. So they're adding new flesh in. 13th best speed. He's just slipped out of the top 12 on the split times. That's a nice looking run though. 12th place at the line, 51.07. So he held it all together in the, ooh, on the brakes, on the brakes. Yeah. Hanging on to the sled, hanging on to the railings.
Lovely line out of 9 there.
Yeah, just maybe even a fraction early onto turn, but that allows him to hold the height, hold, release, and then dive down out of 10. It's a wee bit like Horseshoe in St. Moritz, where we go next, where you need that height to accelerate on the way out. So now then, Adam Amour, brother Issam at 2, Benedikt Hertel at 3, and Rupert Schenk in between them at the back. Bronze medalist yesterday, Adam and Issam Amour in the 2-man race behind Johannes Lochner and Francesco Friedrich. Friedrich and Lochner are 1-2. Now, everybody learns to drive in a 2-man, and once you've got a head around that, you start to handle the big bus. Let's see what he's got here. 5:04, third fastest start.
This is going to be very interesting.
Well, Issam, who is 8 years older, particularly has been in and out of the German team and the World Cup, out more often than in, been trying to find a consistent place, and that's come with his brother. They made their debut together in Segulda last year. They raced together last weekend, very successfully in La Plagne. They were on the podium yesterday. What's Adam got in a 4-man? He's still in the top 3. 10th best speed, slipping away from a podium spot behind Emil Tsipoulis. Should be comfortably in 4th at the line with a shot of a medal. 2800s back, so he's 1100s behind Emil Tsipoulis, and that is doable if he can clean up a couple of errors. He's in with a shout, and that again for a first season 4-man driver. His only ever 2-man start last year was, his only World Cup start rather was 2-man, so it's the first for 4-man here.
Yeah, just seeing this 12 to 13 transition here, it's just not as clean as he probably would have hoped. Just very late off of 12, kicking lots of ice up. You see the handles coming out the side of the 4-man there. I'm sure he wants to improve that for the next run.
There's big Benedikt Hertel, there's Adam Amour. He's desperate to fight to hold his place in the World Cup team. Now he's made his way in. Well, we had a Polish sled, or 2 Polish sleds in the women's competition. We have a Polish sled here in the men's competition as well. Alexei Boron made his World Cup debut yesterday in 2-man. Here he is in the 4-man. Bartosz Sienkiewicz, Severin Sosna, who's in the 2-man sled, and Dominik Boński is the brakeman at the back. So again, really good to see Poland, which has got good history in bobsledding, bringing teams in men and women's competition this season. What a really uncomfortable load, getting hooked up there, trying to climb in.
Anytime you have start mishap or like that, it's absolute panic stations. You'll have people trying to grab you, make sure you don't fall out, and even if you end up going in the sled upside down, it doesn't matter, because everything just needs to cross that finish line to get a second run.
Yeah, exactly right. And we have seen it before with brakemen on the floor of the sled with their teammates sitting on top of them. We've seen Marco Hubenbecker hauled back into the sled after not making it in, feet slipping on the bunks, feet getting caught on the cowl, all sorts of potential disasters. So now then, 18th best start, driving himself into 17th. This is putting him in the race at the moment. He's ahead of Jakob Mandelbauer at the line. He is in the race. So 52.01. Now, when he sits down, he'll go, ah, yeah, but Mandelbauer crashed. Yes, but you didn't. And that's the key, isn't it? It's not about, you know, what the rest of the field do. This is you against the mountain. Nothing anybody else does can affect you. Here, though, yeah.
Oof. Not the place you want to be.
You do not want to be going into the sled head first. Bartosz Sinkiewicz has to get his legs around the driver. There's very little room there, and it takes him a long while to get in, but hey, there you go. Big smile from Alexei Boron. Whether that's relief or jubilation, I don't know. Next up, Adam Dobesh with Dalibor Halveka, Jakub Prochaska and Andre Rapp on the sled. 12th and 14th here in February's races. So he should be ahead of the Polish crew that we've just seen. A little rocking and rolling there as well, not the neatest and tidiest of loads.
No, there's a little skid coming out the kind of start grooves into corner one, so that'll take some of the velocity off. Thankfully, ridden the down, trying to maintain that aerodynamic profile the best they can.
15th best start rather, but slipping away at the moment. Besh is the effective Czech number 2 driver behind Dominik Dvorak. So, see, only the 18th best speed, 17th at the moment. He's only just ahead of Boron of Poland. He's actually behind Mate Buenek by 0.06 of a second. He will not be pleased with that. They started 500s quicker than their rivals, so they've effectively lost 0.3.
Yeah, start time was ranked 15th, coming down 17th. You could argue that the run wasn't too bad. The ice quality starts to degrade, starts to get slow with the amount of sleds that are going down. We've had a few crashes go over the ice.
Yeah.
All kinds of things can happen.
Again, Brakeman doesn't get in. 3 doesn't get in, Jakub Prochaska. And that meant that Dalibor Havelka was hanging over his driver's head into turn 1. Now, Frank Del Duca back with Josh Williamson in the 2-man yesterday, Manuel Mitchell and Darius Joseph on the 4-man sled. They only did 1 heat in a plan last year, last week, because the back axle broke loose. That has been fixed. Let's see what they've got. Oh, and another starting mishap. They get in, get down after 5.19 start. That could have been quicker. The velocity will be affected. 13th fastest through the light beams, but only the 15th best velocity.
Yeah, again, any start mishap is going to kill your start time, kill your velocity, and you're really going to have to fight that back on a short track like this.
He was DQ'd in race 1 in February, finished 8th in race 2. Of course, doesn't count for the European Championships, because last time I checked, North America's not in Europe, late off 9. Ruboy, he is really letting it fly. He's gone from 19th velocity in the first speed trap to a top 10 speed. It's a new frame on this sled, 51.13. Okay, it was a bit of a wild ride to come down in 15th place. Oh boy, it's It's new. Oh, here we go. Backwards, backwards, backwards. That's Josh Williamson trying to hang on to the sled, the man at 2. Now, big Josh at 2. He'll be standing up over his driver's head until the boys behind it. That was Manu Mitchell at 3. His foot slipping off the bunk. There's always a little bit of kind of, you can just see a little matte black patch, a little bit of rubber or something on there to allow the spikes to grip, but he slipped out there. That was late as you want out of 9. Any more than that, you're going to spend the rest of the run on your head. And finally, Brad Hall, Aaron Gulliver, Taylor Lawrence, Greg Cackett. 4-man European champions 2023. 2 silver medals here in February, this crew. In and down, 5:12, there we go. You need a big start. They're all not healthy yet. Only Taylor Lawrence is actually certifiably fit. The rest of them are recovering. 5th best speed off the 7th best getaway. And Nick, that's all part of the deal, isn't it? Carrying that momentum.
Absolutely. The argument is that would you rather have a slower start time by a few hundreds, but then have a better velocity to carry the speed into the first 3 corners? It's entirely different for each track.
I always think a bit like a javelin. It's not how fast the run-up is, it's how violent the throw is. And there's a kind of combination of that going on here. Top 8 speeds. He slipped away from 7th at the start to 9th at the line, 50.94. Okay, so first race weekend of the season for Brad Hall and the crew. I tell you what, our tunnel workers are doing a lot of work. Why is it in a tunnel, by the way? Because the Pachakoffel ski piste is over the top of the track, that's why. So Brad Hall, Taylor Lawrence, Greg Cackett and Aaron Gulliver, who's hidden behind Brad Hall. That's not a phrase you'll say very often, but he's behind the driver on his left-hand side of the sled. Out of 9. Not a bad-looking run, doesn't steer away, but takes the tap into 10.
Yeah, with all the injuries they've had over the summer, I think they're on about maybe 5 or 6 now, and obviously with Brad's spinal surgery, they're doing brilliantly.
Well, they are 600ths out of 5th place. The gaps beyond that are sizable. Francesco Frigic is actually ahead of one of the smaller gaps in the field, just 900ths back to Johannes Lochner, 1700ths back to Emil Sapoulis, but after that, some stretch back to Issam Amour in 4th, Marcus Treichel tied for 5th. Treichel leading the logjam, basically. Marcus Treichel and Sun Kai-chi of China are the stopper in the bottle, so the top 3 are probably your podium finishers unless one of them really blows it and Adam Amour sneaks in. But then Marcus Treichel, Sun Kai-chi, 100th ahead of Seaman Friedley, who's 100th ahead of Cedric Follador, who's 400ths ahead of Brad Hall, who's 400ths ahead of Lee, who's 200ths ahead of Baumgartner, who's 400ths ahead of Vogt, who's 200ths ahead of, I mean, you get the gist. It's fairly close there, right the way down to Dominic Dvorak and Frankie Del Duca. Then there's a little step back to Matti Buenek, Adam Dobesh and Alex Aboron. And unfortunately, Jakob Mandelbaum and his crew will not get a second run. So, that sets our field after a highly dramatic first run. Let's see what happens in the final slide before the Christmas-New Year break, which for some of them cannot come too soon. We'll see you at 3 local, 2 GMT, and that is 1100 Eastern. We'll see you then. Bye for now.